Hello everybody, Infinite Shinjo here, and welcome to another team remaking video. And to be quite honest, I'm running out of ideas, cause I've covered Ash's teams in each one of his series outside of the Galar region. I've covered his friends, and now I'm here to cover his rivals. But after that, I'm not sure if there's anything else that I could do. I mean, I guess there is a part 2 to the rival part, but I'll get into the info on that later. So I don't know if there's going to be anything else, unless there's something obvious that I'm missing. But it's been a fun run. It's honestly kind of cool to come up with alternative teams for all these different parts of the Pokemon anime. But next to the main characters themselves, the biggest part of the Pokemon anime are the rivals. The main reason for Ash to continuously grow and get stronger and eventually face them in the league. And there have been a lot of different rivals, some bigger than others, and I figure for this one to just focus on 5 big rivals, and if there are any that you feel deserve to be here, then I suppose I can make a part 2. But for this video, I'm going to be covering Gary Oak, Paul, Trip, Gladion, and Alon. I was tempted to include characters like Stefan from Unova, or Cameron from Unova, or even Barry from Sinnoh, but I didn't want this video to be too long, and I figured the biggest main rivals and the ones I could realistically work a different team for just to make things more interesting. And then there are characters like Hao, who unfortunately didn't get much spotlight in the anime at all. But one thing that I noticed when I was looking through all of these rivals that I'm covering in this video is there is a lot of overlap with their teams. For example, Gary and Paul both had Electivire. And then we have Paul and Alon, who both had a Weavile. And then Gary and Gladion both have Umbreon. So I wanted to try and make each team as distinct as possible, so a lot of Mons got lost in the shuffle or moved around to different places. But I don't think I need to explain myself anymore. You know how this series works. So let's get started with Gary. And his original team, there is a lot that wasn't explored in the original series, and I'm taking all of these from Cerebi just for reference. But his team, or Mons that he owned if anything, were Electivire, Umbreon, Blastoise, Dodrio, Magmar, Scizor, Golem, Nidoking, Arcanine, Krabby, Nidoqueen, Skarmory, Kingdra, Houndoom, Fearow, and Pinsir. A lot of those Mons he didn't use at all, but they were just shown on the screen when Ash was prepping to battle him in the league. But for these types of videos, I only wanted to include 6 different Mons, so here's what I came up with. So to start with, I had to keep Blastoise. It's his biggest noticeable Mon when it comes to Gary. And the same is true with his Umbreon. I didn't necessarily want to keep Umbreon on his team since there's so many characters that use Umbreon, but I figure it's fine. And then for the other ones, I got a little bit more creative. I figure Golem just looks like a Gary sort of Mon. I can't remember because the list is so long. Yeah, Gary did canonically have a Dodrio, so it makes sense for him to actually use that. And as well, he did use Arcanine, which that's a bit weird because, to be quite honest, I thought his Arcanine was much more pronounced on his team than what it was. But he didn't really use it that much looking back on it. But let's cover the big elephant in the room, Rhyperior. So the reason I did that is I didn't want him to have Electivire because Paul's Electivire is a lot more noticeable and much more pronounced on his team than Gary. And I figure Gary needs a Mon from Sinnoh to get Ash to travel to Sinnoh. And I figured, why not a ground type that can't get hit by Pikachu at all? Granted, Rhyperior isn't really the best looking Pokemon, but I wanted it to be a Sinnoh-mon that evolved from a Kanto-mon. And from the ones that fit in that list, this is the one that makes the most sense to me. Tangrowth, Licky Licky, Mons like that don't really seem to fit for Gary, in my opinion. Of course, for Gary, I could easily pull from his game team and take mons from there, but I figure this is okay. At the same time, this is all just speculation, and even at the time recording this video, I'll probably change my mind by the time it comes out, so it's okay. Let's move on to what is actually my favorite rival from Pokemon, and that is Paul. I really like his presence in the anime, and the rivalry between him and Ash is just chef's kiss wonderful. And his team is Torterra, Electivire, Magmortar, Ursaring, Weavile, Honchkrow, Aggron, Gastrodon, Drapion, Ninjask, Frostlass, Gliscor, Nidoking, Hariyama. Of course, there were like 3 Starly and a Azumarill and a Stantler that he released, but I'm not counting them since he released them. So here's what I did for Paul's team. So obviously, let's get the big ones out of the way. The Aggron I kept, the Electivire I kept, Magmortar, Ursaring, Torterra I kept. I feel like they make sense for Paul's team, and obviously I couldn't get rid of Electivire. But instead of giving him a Ninjask, I decided to give him Shedinja. Because my logic was, I can't remember how exactly it is in the story, but I know that he saw his brother Reggie battle Pyramid King Brandon. And Pyramid King Brandon hails from Sinnoh. Nope. Pyramid King Brandon hails from the Hoenn region. So I wanted to have a little bit more Hoenn reference on his team other than his Aggron. And I figure he already has Ninjask, why not give him a Shedinja instead? Because I feel like Paul's the kind of person that would make use of a Shedinja really well. And I wanted to give Paul or anybody here really unique teams, and you would be hard-pressed to find somebody with a Shedinja on his team. Plus, this would give the people watching a chance to learn about Shedinja and his ability. I just think it'd be cool to see. But realistically, Paul has a lot of cool mons, but like a Gastrodon, didn't really feel like that made sense to keep. Frostlass is neat, but he only used it like one time. Same with the Nidoking, Hariyama, and Gliscor. Plus, Ash already had a Gliscor in the anime. But out of all of his mons, I don't think there was any chance I could get rid of Paul's Ursaring. Not after it chokeslammed Pikachu in that battle. And Blaziel for that matter. To be quite honest, that was actually a very easy explanation. Of course, I kept a lot of his team intact. So let's move on to Trip. Trip is a very problematic character because he's Trip, first of all. Coming after a rival like Paul is always going to be a rough time to go through. And people really, at least me, I can see similarities between Paul and Trip. It's just that Trip was done not so well. Now the problem with Trip's team, and the main reason I didn't include people like Stefan or any of the other rivals from Unova, is because I wanted to give each one of them different teams so there's not much overlap, which is the main reason I didn't keep Ash's Pignite in that video. But there's so many mons that you could say, oh, Stoutland for example. Burgundy used Stoutland. Like half the decks you could say, this person used this Pokemon. So it was hard for me to find a team unique enough that I could see that Pokemon belong to that one person. But Trip's team was Superior, Tranquil, Frillish, Lampent, Conkeldurr, and Vanillite. And from his original team, I didn't really keep that much, but let me show you. So I had to keep Superior, it makes sense, that's the starter he picked. And Conkeldurr, I feel like that's getting to be more of an ace on his team than Superior in my opinion. And really, just wondering why they didn't use Frillish or Lampent to the fullest extent and evolve them all the way. They were just shown at their base and second stages and they never fully evolved. And I feel like it'd be cool to see Trip have a Jellicent and a Chandelure because that's a pretty cool team. And then as far as Durant and Archeops, I just couldn't find anything else. Like, I have a Unova poster in my room. I was trying to find other mons that I could add, but these two just look like mons that Trip will use. And from the team that he had before, Unpheasant, let's be real. Unpheasant is not terrifying at all. Just for a little bit of foreshadowing, I didn't keep the unpheasant that Alon used as well. Although to be fair, if I would have thought this far ahead, I probably could have done something where Trip has a Durant, and instead of giving Ash Darmanitan, I give him Heatmore to have that rivalry going on just for a little bit of fun. But didn't think that far ahead. But I don't think there's much else I can talk about with this team. The only other mon I could have kept was his Vanillite and evolve it all the way to Vanillux. But Georgia already had a Vanillux in the show, even though she didn't really use it that much. So that's just a tricky thing when you have so many characters in the series. But let's move on to everybody's favorite champion, Alon. Sarcasm intended. So I thought about this, and even back when Kalos was going on, at that point there were 6 regions. And with Alon's team, his original team is Charizard, Metagross, Tyranitar, Unpheasant, Weavile, and Bisharp. And to be quite honest, for me, I feel like it would have been cool if he had, from his team of 6, 1 mon from each generation. And it was going well until he had Unpheasant and Bisharp. 2 Gen 5 mons, and that just ruined the whole flow of it. So I decided to pick 1 mon from each generation and have that be a representative from each region. Of course, you can make the case for Charizard being a Gen 1 mon or Gen 6 because of the Mega Evolution, but I decided to keep it at Gen 1. But let me show you what I did with the team. So going through the generations, I kept Charizard from Gen 1, I kept Tyranitar and Metagross from Gen 2 and 3 respectively. I just feel like that's a pretty powerful team, especially for the league. And I gave him Paul's Drapion. Well, not specifically Paul's Drapion, but a Drapion if anything, because that just looks like a mon he would use. And I kept the Bisharp because why not give him more dark types? And the part I'm most proud of here is giving him a Pyroar. It's another fire type, sure, but at this point, Alon is still a mystery to everybody else besides him and Team Flare. So I feel like him having a Pyroar, you could even have it be Lysander's Pyroar, throwing in a little bit of foreshadowing that he's working with Team Flare. I just feel like that works so well. And in a region like Kalos where there is very little dex to go off of, that's just really cool. I really like how that worked out. This is probably my favorite from all of them in this video. Let's move on to the last person in this video, and that is Gladion. Now, obviously Gladion being from the games, I could take any of his in-game teams. The problem is, he also has a Weavile. But if you haven't noticed, I haven't used Weavile for Alon's team or Paul's team, so it just kind of balances out. But let me not get too carried away with myself. So Gladion's original team in the anime is Lycanroc Midnight, Umbreon, Silvally, and Zoroark. Didn't even have a full team, so I had my work cut out for me with this one. But what I ended up doing was something really wild. So I kept the Lycanroc, I gave him Weavile because he used Weavile in the games. I kept Silvally, I kept Zoroark, they're just big significant mons on his team. I gave him Crobat because he used Crobat in the games. And to wrap it up, I was not sure about giving him Umbreon. For a little bit of fourth wall break, I initially gave him Leafeon because I normally included How in this video and I gave him Flareon as a bit of counterpart Leafeon to Flareon. But I thought I should still include Umbreon because in my companion video, I gave Lily Espeon, so I just feel like I had to do it. But I didn't want to give him a normal Umbreon because Gary already has a normal Umbreon. So I decided to make it shiny. Feel like that's the best compromise that I could have come up with. And shiny Umbreon just looks really good. Just wish Umbreon wasn't so much of a tank that it is. Otherwise it'd be actually fun to fight against. But Umbreon's just a big tank and it's not really fun to play against. Especially when it spams Moonlight. But that's a different story. But yeah, like, I'm really glad with how this team came out. And it was a bit difficult because a lot of mons that Gladion uses both in the base games and the Ultra games were already overlapped. Like, he had a Lucario. Ash has Lucario. he had Weavile, but I either had to give him the Weavile or give Alon or Paul the Weavile. And it's just a difficult thing that a lot of rivals overlap so many mons, so it was difficult to come up with. But that is going to be it for this video. And going through this video, the only thing I could think about, besides a part 2 for the rivals, if that even comes up, is maybe do one for Team Rocket teams. But if I do that, it wouldn't be full teams for each region, because Team Rocket never have a full team unless you count 3 apiece. But if you want to see me do a Team Rocket video, I guess I can do that. Otherwise, throw any ideas you have out at me. I'd love to hear them. But if you enjoyed, hit that like button. Let me know what you think about these teams. Subscribe if you haven't. I'll see you next time. Momentai.